Well, I'm seeing different flavors of sugar mamas. I have acquaintances who went through divorces and they were in their 50s or 60s and were having self-esteem issues. And for them, dating and hooking up with younger men was an ego feed. And they paid the bills.
Welcome to Secrets of a Sugar Daddy. Here's your host, Marcus.
Welcome to another episode of Secrets of a Sugar Daddy and Sugar Momma, the #1 sugar dating podcast in Ireland and the rest of the world, where we pull back the curtains on the good and the bad, and Lilly, the oh so shocking stories.
Let's hear your best Irish accent. I think mine was British.
You know, last time I tried an accent, you roasted me pretty good.
Well, it was awful, but that's why, for entertainment value, let's hear you do the intro with your best Irish accent.
Well, I don't think I can do that, mate. No, no. That was partly Mexican and Australian.
And maybe a little like Indian.
Yeah, I don't know.
Sound like you work in a convenience store.
It was terrible. I don't do accents well. I got to practice them. I'm not like a comedian that can get up there and just. Have you seen Peters? What's his name? Oh, he's an Indian guy. He does comedian.
You sent me a reel or a TikTok of him, and he was hilarious.
Oh, he does all these accents. I love it. Peters. Anyway, getting old sucks.
Yeah.
It's in my brain. I just can't pull it out.
We have someone here to help us with that today.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. First of all, let's thank Pod Populi. This is a great studio, isn't it?
It's wonderful. Thank you, Pod Populi.
They had the 3-year anniversary party of the Scottsdale location yesterday, and that was a lot of fun.
I had family in town, and I couldn't make it. How was it?
It was good.
How was the turnout?
It was good. Yeah.
What would you say the attendance numbers look like?
Well, I mean, here's the problem. They have parties every week here, so
that's true.
It's not like as big a deal as it is if you have a party once a year. So, but there was a good attendance. They had a special. They had $1,000 off an annual membership.
Wow. Didn't they have live music?
I wasn't here for that, but Yael, who used to work with them and has a podcast of her own, she's a great singer. She was on our show.
Oh.
And she broke into song, and it was amazing. But I wasn't here for that. She was supposed to do some kind of a happy anniversary in a Marilyn Monroe manner.
Cute.
Yeah. So she had been practicing that. But Alejandra and I were getting hungry, so we left and went and ate at Olive and Ivy. It was really good.
I love that place.
Yeah. So if you're looking to start a podcast and you want to find a great place to record, go to podpopuli.com and see if they have a location near you. And if they don't, go ahead and contact them and tell them that you want one so they'll know what the interest is in your city. Second, we want to encourage you to go to our website, fill out the quick survey. It takes a couple minutes. Our good friend Maria Scaptura, PhD student at University of Arkansas, is doing a sanctioned survey on sugar dating.
She sure is.
It's a fun topic, and we need stats. So if you will go through that survey with her and then sign up for a phone call, it's easy, it's painless, it's unrecorded, it's anonymous. You don't even have to give your name. Just answer a few questions about your experiences in the bowl, in the sugar bowl. I think that's it. I believe the deadline is passed for our party, but we will be having more parties. So check the website. You will see links to come party with us to find out what the next one is. If the entry form is still up, go ahead and fill it out. We will save that, and you will automatically be entered into our next party. You excited for that, Lilly? It's just a few weeks away.
It's getting so close.
I know.
And it's going to be so fun.
We've got the party bus set up with the stripper pole. Now, no shenanigans are going to take place, I'm sure.
Of course not.
But we are having the pre-party at my house, and that will be a ton of fun. Mm-hmm. Then the bus will pick us up, take us to the party, take us to the concert, private suite, all you can eat, all you can drink. And it's going to be a lively, lively concert. You and I just went to a really fun concert, didn't we?
We sure did.
We went and saw Pink.
Yes. Oh, my gosh.
She's
quite the performer.
I wasn't that excited to go to the concert, but Alejandra was like, oh, my God, I love all her music. So we started listening to it. I'm like, how many bangers does she have? It's like
Dozens.
I couldn't believe how many great hits that she has. And her show was very high energy, and she flew around the stadium.
Okay, first of all,
That was really cool.
she runs like the length of a football field from side to side
Yeah.
and then out to the audience.
Yeah.
She just runs the whole time.
Yeah.
And then she gets up on a flying trapeze thing and does flips and spins and twirls and pirouettes whilst singing.
Yeah. It was a great concert.
I was amazed. She was just wonderful.
Yeah. And her opening band, not Belinda Carlisle, but Brandy
I
Carlisle.
was so confused. I thought I was going to see Belinda Carlisle.
Open up.
But I had never heard of Brandy Carlisle,
Oh,
but
she was
she
so
is
good.
quite the vocalist.
You know, she's been touring for a while. She's starting to make some traction, but yeah, her vocals were just. And the great thing is sometimes they get up there and it's so distorted with all the band and just being so loud, but her vocals were amazing and you could hear them very clearly.
Yeah.
So it was fun.
It was a great concert.
Yep. We did a little double date with your
My boyfriend.
your sugar daddy / boyfriend.
He's my boyfriend.
He's your boyfriend now.
My trucker boyfriend.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Pod Populi, as we talked about earlier, they record a lot of great podcasts in here. And we've got a lady who contacted us. She just started her own podcast, and she wants to kind of touch on the subject of sugar mamas. I would love to have a sugar mama. How about you think there's very many sugar mamas out there?
I think there are more than we're aware of.
I think so, and I think we're going to get into that here in a second. But I just wanted to introduce what her podcast is about. It's called The Geezer Proofer, and her name is Nancy Shenker, and I believe she's from the East Coast. She'll tell us all about that, and she just launched, and it's a hoot. Well, you know what? I'm just going to let her tell her about herself. I don't need to get into all the specifics.
Yeah, let's give her some airtime.
All right, welcome, Nancy.
Thank you. Thank you for having me as a guest.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. You teased me with a fun subject, but first of all, I want to hear about your podcast.
Absolutely. As you mentioned, it just launched. I'm on episode 2, but I'm rapidly scaling. And it's called The Geezer Proofer, How to Be a Badass After 50. I am going to be 68 years old in February. Hard to believe. But
How did that happen?
I don't know. I don't know.
And listeners, let me just tell you, when she told me her age, I did a double take. She does not look her age. So it's got to be something about her health care routine and her attitude. We'll let her tell us, but I want to look this good when I'm 68.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think what we need to do, and it was part of the reason for my launching the podcast, is we need to redefine aging. I think I do look like the new 68. And we have this preconception of what older women look like, how older women should dress, what older women should do. And I have never, ever followed any rule for anything. As I've aged, I've become even more of a rule breaker because I give fewer shits about what people think of me.
Isn't that a nice thing to just encompass? Like, I don't give a fuck. I'm
Yeah.
going to live my life like I want to live it. I don't care what you think.
And I'm part of a generation that was the first generation of women to have big careers, families, and there is no rule book for what we should be doing or acting like as we get older. You know, the 68 of today is radically, radically different from my grandmother's 68 or even my mother's 68. And what society expects you to do, we have many more role models. And something that we're going to talk about as we talk about Sugar Mommas is we have all kinds of economic independence that previous generations of women didn't have, which is one of the reasons why the divorce rate is currently so high, because a lot of women are just not happy in their marriages. And instead of suffering in silence like previous generations did, they're just saying, I'm out, for better or for worse.
I can take care of myself.
Yeah. And I just read a statistic that's mind-boggling that the next generation of women are going to inherit $30 trillion from their parents when they die. It's not necessarily a pleasant topic or statistic,
Yeah.
but that's going to mean that there are going to be that many more women who've got a lot of money, which you could argue that will probably give rise to even more sugar mamas and sugar daddies than there are today.
Well, we have yet to interview anybody in that category considered a sugar mama. They are out there. We know of some that are in the spotlight, celebrities, but there's not enough that we know about that is talked about much.
And I think that's because there is and I'm not a sugar mama, but I know many of them and have been approached by many young men to be their sugar mama. So I am probably as much of an expert in the category as any. But when we think about sugar mamas, I always think of that old movie, Sunset Boulevard, where the sugar mama was kind of old and pathetic, and the young guy who was living with her was being held captive, and then it ended badly for everybody.
I have not seen this.
Definitely a must-watch, Sunset Boulevard, which is sort of the antithesis of what a healthy sugar mama relationship could look like. And I'm not a sugar mama because I don't approve of the lifestyle. You know, I'm very accepting. As you said, I'm from New York, so anything goes in my head and in my life. And I have acquaintances who've kind of lived that lifestyle. So I do understand it. But it's a choice to make, just as becoming a sugar daddy is a choice. And I think we're going to see more and more sugar mamas as time goes on, and who will probably be prouder and more vocal about their status.
Now, I have friends. I'm a member of a local country club here, and I have friends who married into a wealthy family. Men that I play golf with, they'll say it's my wife's side of the family that has the money, but they're still working. They still have careers. They're not just living the life of luxury and letting the woman work or the woman provide. What's the vision of a sugar mama, or what are you seeing out there?
Well, I'm seeing different flavors of sugar mamas. I have acquaintances who went through divorces, and they were in their 50s or 60s and were having self-esteem issues. And for them, dating and hooking up with younger men was an ego feed. And they paid the bills. I know one woman who was with a guy for several years, and he traveled with her from one bougie area of the country to another. And he was charming. He was great arm candy. But it was really clear that she was the money and the beauty, and he was the young dude.
Does it take some of the masculinity role from the men, though, as being the strong provider, protector, strength of the relationship?
I think more and more men are getting comfortable with that role. I think if you were a 50 or 60-year-old guy, you probably would have more of a problem with a powerful, wealthy woman. In fact, when I date men close to my own age, I get comments like, you know, you're a hotshot, you're accomplished, and I can be intimidating, not necessarily because of my personality, but just because of what I've done in my life and career and continue to do. And a lot of men my age are retired, and I'm still working, and I've got my podcast, and I've got a couple websites, and I used to work in corporate. So I think men of my generation are more easily intimidated by women like me, which is why many of them do tend to date younger women. And this was something that I talked about on my show yesterday with Brian Howie about relationships between older men and younger women. I think that younger guys almost see it as a stepping stone to a better lifestyle than they currently have. And there are different flavors. There are like the lazy dudes who just don't really want to work, and for them, it's awesome. Plus, they've watched a lot of MILF porn. And so,
Yeah.
and my daughters and their friends, if you're listening, I reinforce, I am not a sugar mama. I just happen to know a lot about the topic. But you've got, you know, the guys in their 20s who want to hang out with a woman in her 50s or 60s because they either have mommy issues, or they don't want to work and they see this as a meal ticket, or they just think it's hot.
Well, I know Lily's experienced it, but they didn't want her money. They just thought she was a beautiful older woman. It was almost like a fantasy.
It's definitely a very popular fetish online.
Yeah,
The younger men
absolutely.
hitting on the older women.
Yeah, I used to get a lot of that in New York, like guys in their early 20s when I was in my late 50s. And the first time I was like kind of flummoxed by it. Like, unless they're applying for an internship, what am I going to do with this guy? And then sort of the other flavor of women and it's very similar to sugar daddies, where they may not want to get emotionally involved in a relationship, but they like having the arm candy. They like having a companion when they go out to events or to dinners, and it doesn't bother them to pick up the tab because they're getting that companionship. And I think it also, in terms of perception from other people, they're like, oh, that woman must really have something going on if she's with that hot guy 20 or 30 years younger. Mm-hmm. And then you do have the women who kind of inadvertently become sugar mamas, where they have a lot of money. And I've seen that situation too. And there are guys who just love them for their money. I do call it, and I don't doubt that Demi Moore and Ashton Kutcher had a good relationship for a while, but eventually he traded her in for a younger model.
Yes, he did.
And that is one of the reasons why dating down beyond a decade or two never really appealed to me, because I'm not going to have any more kids, and I'm not going to live that life. And a lot of men who are in their 30s may say, oh, I'm never going to get married. I'm never going to want that. I love this older woman. But then things change, and there's nothing worse than being an older woman getting dumped by a younger man, which has happened to me. And I'm not going to do that again if I could help it.
So can we ask, what career are you in?
Oh, so I used to be the head of marketing for at the time of the world's largest trade show company. They now own Comic-Con. And then before that, I was heading up retail banking at Citibank, and I was in charge of integrated marketing at MasterCard. So I had a very long corporate career. And then 20 years ago, I started my own marketing consulting company, and I still do marketing consulting, and I'm a writer and a speaker, and I've written 9 books, including 2 about AI. So if you look at my resume, it's impressive, but I put my pajamas on like everybody else. And when people say to me, you've got this glamorous life, I'm like, what? Like sitting in my jammies watching The Bachelor or 90 Day Fiance. I've done well professionally, but I'm not a celebrity or a big deal. I'm a big deal in my own mind, but that's about it.
And I heard you say you had children. Was that hard, juggling a career and children?
Oh, it was ridiculous. I mean, whoever came up with that idea that women could do it all in the 80s was fucking lying. Like, it's at any one time I was either a bad mother or I was a terrible leader, and I had a 3-hour-a-day commute, and there was no technology. So when you left the office, you left the office. And I do think women today have a whole different lifestyle than we did back in the 80s, but the good news is we laid the groundwork for women today to feel like they've got more choices.
So I assume you were married at one point?
I was married 27 years.
27 years.
I've been single about 10.
Okay.
And I was in a relationship for about 4 years along the way, and I've been single again for about 3.
Okay. And how is the dating pool?
It is...
Oh, as she's fluttering her eyes, you should see this.
It is very shallow and very dank. My feeling about the dating pool, once you get over, it's even different over 60 than it was when I was in my 50s, because they make you lead with your age. Mm-hmm. And so people will set an age range, and I'm out of their range. Mm-hmm. Whereas if I were out to dinner or out at a bar or out at an event, I'm much more likely to meet somebody because they're not going to lead with, you're almost 70 years old. For some reason, that freaks people out. Mm-hmm. Whereas I do much better in person than I do on the apps.
Yeah.
I get that. I hear a lot of people say that too.
Yeah, and I'm not willing to invest a lot of money in work and lips and lashes and all of that stuff.
Yeah,
I'm
at this point, yeah, I mean, Lily, do you think it's worth it at that age, or just, this is me, love me for who I am?
I'm that girl who will not go gently into that good night. I'm fighting the aging process for all it's worth.
Yeah.
And I'm completely open to having work done as long as it's safe and I know I'm going to get a good result.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, to each his or her own. I've had enough non-elective surgery throughout my life that if I'm going to go under a knife again, or even like have stuff injected into my face, I just don't want to risk it. And I was blessed with good genes and a mother and a grandmother who just flipped the bird and said, this is me, take it or leave it. And that's how I'm living my life. But I don't.
Well, I think one of the problems is that we see through some celebrities, I won't mention names, but you'll know, they've overdone the surgery so bad.
Oh, yes.
And you're just like, oh, wish you could just, turn back the clock.
That terrifies me more than anything is the possibility of getting a bad result or overdoing it and just looking outlandish or alien.
Yeah. We just have to normalize the aging process. I mean, people like Helen Mirren, or was it Pam Anderson recently who went out without makeup on?
She does all the time now. I watched her documentary and she still looks great with zero makeup.
And I think that's really important that women give other women the option. It was kind of jarring when I moved from New York to Scottsdale, because in New York, most people just age gracefully. It's just a different physical aesthetic. Whereas here, it's much more like Orange County. I mean, let's just be real.
Well, I think they said per capita, Scottsdale has the most plastic surgeons in the country per capita.
Yeah.
So.
And peer pressure takes hold. Your girlfriends will go, oh, I just found this great doctor. And they're just like, all right, is something wrong with me that I haven't done this stuff?
Mm-hmm. So where are you looking then? What pool are you fishing out of? You say you've been on some apps?
On and off the apps. I have a list of non-negotiables, which I don't think are particularly stringent. Just things that I'm looking for in my next partner. I love to travel. I want to meet somebody who's got the desire and the means to be able to just pick up and go away somewhere for a weekend. What I think has happened is a lot of the women around my age are very, very active. We are socially active. We travel. Single women are buying houses on their own at a really, really fast rate. We have disposable income, and we are looking for people to do things with. I have a pretty good core group of girlfriends around the country, but I would love, it sounds very ancient, but I would love to have a gentleman companion with benefits that I could travel and explore with, and preferably a monogamous relationship, because I've been through that as well. There are a lot of men who've been in long-term relationships. They just want to sample every dish on the buffet table. They're not necessarily honest about it. And especially at this age, to catch an STD at the age of 68 or 69 or 70, just not something that I'm interested in.
You know that age range is the highest risk because they just don't give a fuck at that point. Well, actually, the highest range is, I think it was 16 to 24, 25. The next category that has the most STDs is your older generation, because they're just
Well, I don't
really
think it's
care.
that they don't care about the disease. I think it's all right, well, I'm not going to get pregnant, so I don't really need any protection. And what they don't realize is that the person they slept with may have slept with 10 other people, and all it takes is one of them to have creepy crawlies.
Well,
and then you're...
and at the older generation, I mean, you've been around a while. So you've had time to have sexual relations with many, many people throughout your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, assuming that you haven't been married and monogamous the whole time.
And not to sound like school marm or Dr. Nancy, but I do think everybody should get tested.
Oh, yeah, we talk about that all the time in the sugar dating world. Well, in any dating situation, it's highly recommended. So what you described of what you're kind of looking for sounds very similar to what we talk about every week, and that's a sugar dating relationship. Because, we do focus more on the men, and we'd love to have the women involved who are financially supporting a mate, because we want to hear from them. But for the most part, the traditional role is the men need, and not so much something serious, but they just enjoy the company, they enjoy traveling, they enjoy going out and doing things, and like somebody to accompany them. and they're willing to pay them to do it.
Yeah, the difference is in terms of what I'm looking for. I am not looking to be Ms. Moneybags. You know, if I'm going to travel with somebody, I'm a traditionalist in that way. They're
Sure.
either going to pay for me or we're going to split it.
Yeah.
Or, some combination of that. And again, this is my personal view. There are a lot of women who don't mind taking out their wallet. And there was a guy who I was friendly with, not involved with sexually. And every time I would hang out with him, he would let me pay. And I didn't mind because, I was making more money than he was. It was great companionship. But it got to the point where I started feeling resentful. And, there is still, as liberal as I am and as counterculture as I am, there's a small part of me that's like, all right, well, he's the man in the relationship. Right. He should be offering to pay.
Oh, and I love the chivalry. I love it. It's so sexy when a man is just so generous with you.
Exactly. Especially, again, if he has it and he's willing to spend it, that's wonderful. That's such a turn on. And this particular guy, this is a great story. I had been down in California. I'd gone to visit him. He's like, let's go to the beach and out to lunch. He picked the restaurant. And then when the check came, he dodged outside.
I can't even imagine
smoke
this.
a cigarette and didn't come back. And afterwards, I said, dude, that's like really not cool. Like, especially because I had paid for a lot of stuff when he was living in Arizona. And he said to me, he made it my problem. He's like, oh, it's California. You're too uptight. Like, chill out. Needless to say, that was the last time I hung out with him.
Yeah.
It doesn't compute to me.
I have no respect for that.
And women do it too. I mean, I realized when I was out in the Hamptons, there was a woman I was hanging out with, and every time we would go out, she'd say, things are really rough for me right now. Do you mind getting this one? Mm-hmm. And then she would order an expensive item and get a box, so she'd have lunch for the next day. I'm like, whoa, I didn't sign up to be the American Red Cross here.
You're the accidental sugar mama and sugar friend.
Exactly. So, over the years, I've learned a lot. But again, I'm not judging. I do think for some women, being a sugar mama is the right alternative for them. They like the company of young men. They're willing to pay the way so that they can do the things that they want to do. And they don't have to find somebody who is their financial equivalent. I once went out with a guy who drove me past the house that his ex-girlfriend owned as if to say, this is the quality of life I'm expecting. And it was just so weird. I'm like, why are you showing me this house? Are you sending me a message here?
Now, Lilly has found, and I'm not sure if you've ever even considered fishing in this pool, but Lilly has found men in their 70s, mid to high 70s on the sugar dating sites who would love to just provide an experience for somebody. And the reason that she gets hit up so much and other people that are even older is because they don't want to date a 25-year-old. A 75-year-old man doesn't want to have a 30-year-old going to an event or traveling with them. They're looking for an older generation. Have you ever considered that?
Yeah, I mean, I've been out with men in their 70s and 80s, and I think that one of the challenges for me is working in tech and still having my own business. It's like there's an intellectual disconnect and also just a sexual disconnect. I'm just not attracted to some of these guys. That's not to say that I'm ageist. I mean, I would, if the right guy came along and he was 75, 80 and had a high energy level and we could talk about things that were of interest to both of us. But I do think that there's a much bigger, and it's kind of weird in that way, a bigger generational divide between a woman in her 60s and a guy in his 70s or 80s than a woman in her 50s and a guy in his 60s. I think technology has a lot to do with that. I think a lot of these older men, they had wives who never worked, so they just don't even know what to make of me. Like, oh, you talk too much about work, you work too hard, because they have never had a woman like that in their lives.
Mm-hmm. I know Lilly went on numerous dates with men in their, upper 60s and 70s, but felt like you were kind of going out with your grandfather?
Well, you know what? It depended on the individual. So I've gone out with guys in their 60s and 70s. And if they took care of themselves and they were still young and active and energetic and adventurous, then that was better for me. If they really looked their age, and some of them do, and if they acted grandfatherly, then I just couldn't. It just seemed weird and creepy for me to be out and about on the town with a guy that was giving me a grandpa vibe.
Even though it wasn't that big of an age difference.
Because I've got daddy issues, but I don't have grandpa issues. And so there it is.
Yeah.
I just couldn't. And not that they weren't lovely gentlemen, but I just didn't feel comfortable. And I'm talking out in public and in private as well. I still wasn't comfortable, like them wanting to be romantic with me or intimate with me. And I'm like, but you could be my grandpa.
Yeah, and I have found, and again, I'm not going to make a vast generalization, but I do think because of the era, there are just many more sexual hang-ups. You know, there's that whole Madonna and whore thing going on that it was, you know, they're a little bit past the sexual revolution. So there's a little bit of that, you know, intimacy or sex is dirty thing among older men that I just haven't found as much with men in their 50s or 60s.
So what's the youngest guy you would date?
40s, I think.
Yeah.
Having kids, I think that it's important that whoever I get involved with at least understand what parenthood entails. Working in the tech sector, I do hang out a lot with men in their 40s who are always really fun and interesting and engaging, and we have a lot in common. So yeah, I would say probably, 48 would be the youngest. I do, like, in the back of my head, think about, is this somebody that I could bring to Thanksgiving at my daughter's house and not have them feel like being a creepy cradle robber?
A cougar.
Right.
Yeah.
So I have a 29-year difference between Alejandra and I. And supposedly I'm supposed to meet her stepfather, who's the same age as me, who's married to her mom, maybe this weekend. So that's going to be a little awkward.
Oh, you guys haven't met?
I haven't met her. That's the only one. I've met her real dad and her real mom, but I haven't met her stepdad yet.
Oh,
So-
this will be interesting.
But he's a big sports fanatic, and I think we'll get along fine. It's just going to be a little odd that he and I are the same age, and he's got the mother and I've got the daughter.
Is there an age gap between the mom and the stepdad?
Like 10 years.
So
Yeah.
not almost 30.
No. So
Goodness.
that'll be interesting. Nancy, you know a lot of the Sugar Mommas in the East Coast, and you're familiar with them. What's their kind of age difference threshold, do you think?
Well, there's a whole group of women that I knew who, when they first got divorced, again, it was a self-esteem issue, and I think they just didn't want any complications. And one woman I heard of would, like, wake up in some guy's, dorm room with his 4 roommates.
What? And how old was she?
50s.
There you go.
Yeah, I think it's really just more sort of like the thrill, the ego feed, the feeling young again, okay, my husband and I didn't work out, so now I'm going to just go wild. And
that's very parallel to us older men with these younger girls. It kind of brings out our youth, and we start feeling young again. Our minds just kind of go back to, when we were in college and then just starting out. And I think it's probably natural on both sides to want to feel that.
yeah, and everybody just has to figure out if it works for them. I mean, I was out once with a guy who was in his 30s, and the server came over and said, does your son want blah, blah, blah. That doesn't feel good, And I think it's less likely to happen with older men and younger women.
Yeah.
Because the sugar mama thing hasn't really been normalized. And when you said, cougar, I look at it as a disparaging word that
Yeah.
you're like out on the hunt. Whereas,
That's true.
There's no real equivalent for guys. It's like, just an older guy with a younger, hot woman. but they don't say, oh, the guy is, some kind of a beast. So I think we need to,
Beauty and the Beast.
yeah, we need to normalize that for both genders, to say some people are attracted to younger people, some people are attracted to older people. We don't judge. And the money thing is really just a matter of personal preference. I'm just notoriously thrifty, and I don't want to bankroll anybody's life, no matter how old they are. If I have extra money, it's going to go to my kids, or I'm going to treat a friend for a night out. But it doesn't feed my soul to be paying for somebody else's life. And I think, to your point, Lily, in some ways that is like a traditional thing that's been programmed into my head, that even though I've made my own money, I still do like it when a guy picks up the tab or opens the door or pulls out a chair.
I'm the same way. If you're raised that way and your parents tell you that a gentleman's going to open the door for you and a gentleman's going to pull out your chair for you and a gentleman's going to pay for dinner when you go on a date, and you just get to where you expect that and you like that.
She said she didn't want to bankroll, and I was sitting there thinking, well, I'll tell you what, dating's about to bankrupt me. So basically, Alejandra and I decided to become exclusive. And you know what she did?
Oh, no.
She's like, hey, I know you've been seeing other girls, and I know you help them out too. So now that you don't have to do that, you can just go ahead and funnel that money to me. So she wants a raise.
Oh, goodness. Of course she does.
And I'm like,
that
no.
little minx.
Yeah. So anyway,
She's funny.
We're negotiating that right now.
This ring that you have, the kind of turquoise one, is that a pear ring?
It is a pear ring.
Oh, we had
Our girl,
guest, Elena.
I wanted
from
to say
Chicago.
her real name right now.
I did too. From Chicago, she had one also, and she says she's only found one other person with the pear ring on.
Yeah, they haven't caught on yet in the U.S. I did go to a pear meetup last Saturday night, and it was pretty well attended. There were about 60 or 70 people.
How'd you find out about it?
On Meetup.
Oh, okay,
so,
cool.
You order your rings. It's $25. They send you 3 different sizes. So you can wear them on different fingers or gain weight or lose weight. I'm not sure what and it's probably from their standpoint, it's probably, most cost effective to just send everybody 3 rather than do ring sizing. And they're having their first ever ski trip. And I was all excited about it until I found out that it's in France, because right now, it's much more of a European thing than it is a U.S. thing, but I do think it'll catch on in the U.S. And basically, it's a rubber ring that you wear out that says, I'm single and I'm open to talking to random single strangers.
Well, you're only the second person that we've met that has one, but the girl that we talked to before said she had run into a bartender
had one,
a female bartender, and she'd had one, and she was kind of saying the same thing. She hadn't had a lot of success with people here in the States kind of realizing even what it was.
Well, that's why I think they're doing the meetups now, which is a great way of finding like-minded people.
Yeah, I mean, everything has to have a start. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure how long ago they started that, but it's a good idea. I mean, that's why I like online dating, is because we talk about going to a bar to meet people or going to a function to meet. I don't know anybody's status. They could be married, just out with their friends, right? The nice thing about online dating is here's the ones who are online, ready, willing, and available, and
Well,
you
yes and
sort
no.
them by color of hair and all this stuff, right?
There are a fair number of people online who, as you peel the onion, you discover they're still living with...
Of course, yeah, there's some deception there, but they may be deceiving somebody, at least they're telling you, I'm looking to date.
Marcus is never going to approach anybody out in the wild. He just doesn't have that kind of personality.
Yeah, I'm the guy that goes to a party and I sit in the corner and just watch people. And I've
He's
always
never been
that way.
aggressive.
No, it's because I've had a couple bad experiences. I think I'm scarred for life.
Well, it was interesting. The first pair event I went to, it was down in, I believe, Chandler, and it was very, very heavily slanted toward men in the tech industry, and they were largely introverted. So they had their rings on, but they were sitting there waiting for the women to approach them, which we did, because most of the women were pretty outgoing and social. Yeah. The second one I went to was much more balanced, where it was in a different part of Arizona, and people were less fearful about going up to each other and approaching each other. But, like I was saying earlier, it's not like the online world. Nobody came up to me and said, how old are you? What are your hobbies that you participate in? How long were you married? It kind of evolves organically, which is a big advantage of meeting in the real world as opposed to
I could see that.
meeting
I could see
online.
where that would work better
Kind of like
in your situation. Yeah.
speed dating, but slowed way down. Have you ever done a speed dating
That's what I was
event?
gonna ask.
I've done online speed dating, and I only stayed on for like 10 minutes because it was even worse than real online
I
dating.
can just imagine. Seeing it in the movies.
I've never done it, but I still think it would be kind of fascinating to attend one of those and just like see how it works and see
they have them
who
here.
shows up to speed dating.
Yeah, they do have them here.
Yeah, people who are like pressed for time and want to have. I mean, there are a lot of singles meetups here too, and there are always social activities where you're going to meet like-minded people who are interested in the same things that you're interested in. And back to the whole issue of money and dating. I like to go to events where there's a ticket price because then that
They're
the people who are
serious
going to
about
be
it,
there are not freeloaders. It's
That makes sense.
Yes. Oh, it's Groupon. I'm going to this thing because it's only $3, as opposed to
Right.
a party where it's like, oh, it's $100 a head, but I would probably spend that out on a nice dinner anyway. So the chances are pretty good that the people I'm going to meet there are going to value the event and the experience and spend that money.
So when you saw our podcast, Secrets of a Sugar Daddy, what were your thoughts?
Living in Scottsdale, I'm very, very aware of the sugar daddy lifestyle. I see it all over the place.
Yeah, you do. And certainly in this part of the country.
And it's always been intriguing to me as to why people prefer that arrangement to a more, I hate to use the word traditional because it sounds judgmental, but yeah, it works great for some people. And I was a psychology and English major undergrad, so I do understand the psychology of being a sugar daddy. And yeah, I think like a lot of topics, it's something that's out there and that people should be talking about. I mean, that's kind of the beauty of podcasting is
When they see us out in the restaurant, they talk.
Oh, yes. My boyfriend and I will be out to dinner and we'll be like, that's a sugar date.
I know. Same with
And that's a sugar date.
Yeah. Same with Alejandra and I. We'll be at a restaurant and she's like, hey, do you think that's a sugar daddy? I'm like, 100% that guy's a sugar daddy. But then they say that about us too.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's pretty obvious.
But they're sugar daddies and they're sugar daddies. I was once sitting at the bar at Eddie V's and there was a much older man and a younger woman. And you could just tell that she was not really into him. He was like, let's hang out tomorrow with your girlfriends. And she was like coming up with every excuse not to. He's like, oh, you can hang by my pool. And he was like pulling out all the stops. And, he had his hand on her leg and she was like maneuvering away. And
Awkward.
on the flip side, I was at my building pool on Sunday and this older guy was with a woman and he was like, what time is your flight? And do you have TSA pre-check? And he was clearly looking. We'll go out for Seoul for dinner tonight, a Mexican place. And she's like, well, I really like Eddie V's. So, and everybody at the pool was like, all right, sugar situation. It was just interesting to hear their interaction.
Right. Well, we've kind of developed a community of like-minded people and our Instagram is growing. And as a matter of fact, even on our Instagram, we get a lot of guys, mostly from other countries, who will see our Instagram page and then they'll message us, can you hook me up with a sugar mama?
Yes.
We get that a lot, don't we?
Don't give them my name, please.
I'm like, I don't know where that unicorn is. Try New York City, maybe. Or Florida, right?
The reality show Before the 90 Days, that is a lot of the couples. It's established U.S. women who go abroad and find these really hot, interesting, fun guys. And, that's a lot of the dialogue around it is it a love match or is it, something that's going to fizzle out?
Yeah.
And I would say it's about 50-50. I mean, there are some couples that have really, again, who knows in reality TV what's reality, but there are a few that have gone the distance.
What we're finding is, I mean, we discuss everything, the whole gamut, all over the board, how to set up your profiles, how to respond online to these people, why you should get a secondary number. Do you have a secondary number?
I do not.
You should. Google Voice is free, and you should get one when you're, especially when you're online dating. Because there's too much public information out there, and unfortunately, Lilly and Amy and Alejandra and other people have come across stalkers. Angie has come across some really bad stalkers through the online. You just never know who you're meeting. So we recommend everybody to be safe, meet in a public place. If they're going to send you an Uber, find a street corner near your house, not at your house, different things like that.
Speaking of stalkers.
Yeah, what about it?
Do you remember the story about the guy who wouldn't talk to me on the phone? And he absolutely, adamantly refused to FaceTime. But he wanted me to drive up to northern Arizona and meet him at his
Oh, yes. The
murder
The
cabin.
murder cabin
The
story.
murder cabin. He just reached out to me again.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Crazy.
He found me on Facebook. I guess somehow he had my real name.
Was that before you got the Google?
I think, he was, I think he was pre my Google Voice number.
Yeah.
Anyway, he says, oh, I see we have a mutual friend. And he was referring to, I'm not going to give her a real name, but he was referring to Angie. And he's like, how do you know Angie? And I said, oh, through mutual friends. And he's like, oh, that's weird. He's like, are you ready to have a real boyfriend yet? My oldest just moved out and you can move in with me. We've never met, mind you. And I have a spa and a workout room, and he's just like telling me all his things that he has in his house and telling me why I should want to move in. And he goes, oh, and Angie can move in too.
Oh.
Yeah. He's like, mutual friends. Does that
Crazy
mean you're
people.
open to a threesome? You guys can both move in with me and I'll live my best life. I'm like, I hate you. I have a boyfriend. Shut up.
As a writer and a journalist, I always am like walking this fine line between seeing how long these creepers will carry on, and the New Yorker in me is really good. Like getting a bad vibe, shutting it down right away. I have probably reported more people on Bumble than any other Bumble member.
Is that how I got banned?
And I just have really good spidey sense, and I'm a champion Googler, and I have no hesitation to ask people early on for their last name. I mean, they should be more afraid of me at this point than I am of them. And thankfully, knock wood or knock velour, I have really never had any problems.
Well, good. You sound like a very wise dater, and that's one thing that we go over ad nauseum is don't be stupid. Do your research if you can. Don't be a big risk taker, especially when online dating. And we find out that too many of these young girls are so motivated by money and they have bills to pay that they'll throw caution to the wind and they get themselves in situations that just are not good.
No, and in my college self-defense class, I learned how to
There you
break
go.
a man's nose with the palm of my hand. So that has given me amazing
As I see the
confidence.
motion, I'm feeling the pain.
But you're totally right. I think there are a lot of very naive and trusting people out there, and they end up getting catfished or worse than that. So,
Scammed.
yeah.
But we know there's a lot of good people because we have found them. I found Lilly, and she's become a huge part of my life in not only business and pleasure, but we double date together, and we're just like absolutely great friends. I heard from Kimmy today. I'll have to fill you in on that phone
good.
call. Yeah, there's trouble in paradise.
Oh, no.
I'll just tease you guys with that. We can go over that
Doggone
episode.
it.
There's just a lot of great people out there dating, but you got to go through a lot of bullshit to get to those people.
Absolutely.
As we talk about that so much and like how to dig through and to find the really, really great companions.
Yeah, which also, talking about the whole sugar mama thing and women who have money, there are always the red flags or the pink flags there when you know if somebody is taking advantage of your generosity. And it's not just true in dating, it's true with friends too.
True.
Where you always have that one person who is sucking you dry, either financially or psychologically. And then at some point you go, wait a second, this is not the deal. This is not what we bargained for.
And you know what? We're too old for this bullshit and we don't need it. And I literally cut people right out of my life that are a negative impact to me.
Yes,
I
so
just
do
don't
I.
have time for it.
If somebody says something negative or derogatory to me online, I just block them. I don't even respond. I just block them because they don't deserve my energy.
Yep.
So I initially want to go, oh, I'm going to say something scathing. I'm like, no, I'm not.
Take the high road.
I'm going to ignore them.
It's the ultimate power.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Well, we are at the end of the hour. It goes very quick, huh?
It does.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think you were a little concerned, like, oh my gosh, an hour. How are we going to have enough to talk about?
Yeah, my podcast is only about a half an hour because I do have to, be mindful of my day job as well. But yeah, it's always fun. And thank you for having me.
Yeah, again, to tell our listeners about your new podcast. I heard the intro and I was intrigued, but I'm going to listen. Matter of fact, on my way back to my job, I'm going to listen to your podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. It's called Geezer Proof Your Life, How to Be a Badass After 50. My next episode, which drops this week, is Why Are You Still Single? And the perception that society has of people who are not coupled up, that there must be something wrong with us. And I'm going to have a variety of really, really interesting and provocative guests. Provocative is the key word, talking about shit that people don't generally talk about. And a lot of women my age will do stand-up comedy or shows where they talk about menopause and aches and pains and saggy boobs and hormone replacement. And it gets very depressing. And even as someone of that age, I don't want to hear this shit.
What was that? The one about the something diaries? There's a whole show of women talking about women issues, like aging women issues. I want to say
Maybe the menopause diaries.
menopause diaries or something. I can't remember.
But that's really not my jam. I want to talk about the upside of aging, and I feel like I'm wiser and hotter than I've ever been in my life. And
I'm having more fun in my 50s than I've ever had. I'm hoping it's just going to get better.
it does.
And according to you, it does.
Absolutely.
Well, that's great. Well, thank you so much for coming on our show and sharing your stories.
Thank you.
And if you want to share your crazy dating stories, go to our website at secretsofasugardaddy.com. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram. I'll tell you what, we have a new person handling some of our Instagram videos, and she has stepped it up, right, Lily?
Yes, she's amazing.
They're fun and they're good.
Yeah,
and
she's
so
great at, what would you call those? Like
just editing, composing the videos together with the sound of the podcast. And she brings in a lot of visuals, and they are a lot of fun to watch. And we want you to share those with your friends so we can grow our Instagram page. It never hurts to get more listeners. So go follow us there. Until next time, I appreciate Lily being here. And again, Nancy, talk to you soon. All right, bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us. If you'd like to connect or even be on the show, we'd love to hear from you at secretsofasugardaddy.com.